Hey folks, Joe Valley here. Welcome to another episode of the Quiet Light Podcast. Today's podcast is sponsored by My Amazon Guy. I know the founder, Stephen Pope, personally, and you may have seen him all over YouTube sharing free educational content. If you need someone to level up your PPC, SEO, design, and manage your entire Amazon catalog, check him out at myamazonguy.com. Okay, so today's podcast is with someone that went from 22 to 32, building a business and exiting it, and does not have to work again for the rest of her life. She's just published her 20th book. And no, that's not her business. That's just her side gig. And she is in this particular book. It's called The 10-Year Career. And she's helping people plan out through the book and through their entrepreneurial journeys how to be done in 10 years. She's done it herself. She's helped a lot of other people do it as well. And if you implement what she talks about in the book, then you can have the same path. Now, you could be done and not work in 10 years, or you could just go on to your next adventure knowing that you are financially free. She breaks things down in a way that make complete and total sense. For instance, probably 65% of you listening are still in the execute phase of your business, of your entrepreneurial journey. You're working on the business. You're grinding it out. You're just the name, the face. Without you, the business is not going to last for 2 weeks. If you go away for 2 weeks, things are going to start to fall apart because no one can do what you're doing. You got to get beyond that into what she calls the systemize phase. It's what she did that enabled her to step back from running her agency. And this was a social media agency that she operated, allowed her to step back and run the agency from afar. She was no longer the name, the face, the initial person that the clients talked to, the one managing the website, doing these different things. And for about 6 years, she traveled and did whatever she wanted to. She's a power lifter as well. She's won some championships, power lifters. She represents the UK in some events and things of that nature. And she's like 5'2", like you would never know when you look at her. If you're listening, check it out on video as well on YouTube. But then it gets into a couple of different sections: scrutinize and exit. So you've got execute, systemize, scrutinize, and exit. We go into details on all of them. She tells her journey, her story, some incredible advice all along the way. Her name is Jodie Cook. It's called The 10-Year Career. You can have one too. Just pick up a copy of the book. Listen to what she's got to say here. It will help you dramatically. Here we go. Jodie Cook, welcome to the Quiet Light Podcast. How are you?
Hey, Joe. Thank you for having me. I'm amazing.
So good to have you here. Whereabouts in the world are you at the moment?
I'm in Lisbon, Portugal, and I've been here for about a week so far.
About a week. Good for you. But you're from the UK, folks, in case you're listening to the accent. We've got one gentleman over there on the team, David Newell, great guy. Don't ask me exactly where, because I can't remember. Sorry, David, you've told me 20 times and I still can't remember. Congratulations on what is your 20th book, 10-Year Career. It's quite a milestone. Just to write one book is crazy. I know it's a lot of work. The 20th, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I really love writing books. It turns out, which is good. But they started off as journal entries to myself when I was running a business. And I was just processing all the mess that was going on in my head when I was hiring and firing and getting clients and losing clients and figuring it all out. So I'd write journal entries about what I was going through. And then through a series of fortunate events, I got a contributor slot on Forbes. And that's when I started turning those journal entries into articles for entrepreneurs. And then that felt really raw and vulnerable, writing the stuff out there. But then I got such good feedback that I just carried on. And then they turned into a bunch of articles, and then articles turned into books, and then they were 20.
But you're not just a writer, you're an entrepreneur, and 10-Year Career comes from all of your years. And it's really not that many years in terms of being an entrepreneur, building your own agency and exiting to the point where you really don't have to do anything you don't want to do for the rest of your life. You're very well off financially from the sale. Is it, let's just cut to the chase. 10 years. Can almost anybody that pays attention, does the right thing, have a 10-year career and then do whatever the hell they want for the rest of their life, just like you're doing now?
think so.
Because I wish, I mean, if that's the case, why didn't you write this book when I was 20? That's what I want to know.
Sorry.
Probably because I wouldn't have paid attention to it. I wouldn't have read the damn thing. We just talked about that a little bit, that people don't, read the books. They want a piece of the author and talk to the author and whatnot. But yeah, so talk to us about the point of the book and the steps that people can go through to really have the outcome that they want to have in their career.
I think that looking back, it's so much easier to create a pattern and a framework and a story out of everything that happened. I don't think when I was 22 starting an agency, I thought, oh, I can build it and sell it and then not have to work within 10 years. I don't think that was what I even imagined was possible. But I feel like someone now at the start of their journey could aspire to that and could get it done if they did the right things in the right order. And doing the right things in the right order is a really big part of the book. So the 4-step framework is execute, systemize, scrutinize, and exit. And if you follow those 4 steps and do those things at the right time, I think it would set up any entrepreneur pretty well to have an exit on their terms that means that they don't have to work again.
But why exit?
Well, yeah, you don't have to exit. You could step back, you could continue to own the asset, and you could have someone else run it. I know from my situation with my agency, I don't think I would have found that super easy. I think that you need such strong boundaries as to when you can be tapped on the shoulder and when you absolutely can't be tapped on the shoulder. And then you have to be okay to let fires burn, maybe, because if you have exited to the point where you own but you don't run the company, you can't just get involved at every opportunity, because then it undermines your team who are looking after everything. So you don't have to exit, but I think it's a very good thing to do, as you know.
Well, yeah, I ask it facetiously, but you're right. I've talked to people that have elevated themselves to the board of directors. They've got a CEO, CTO, CMO, all sorts of acronyms, but somehow they're still involved. As I think about the next phase of my career here at Quiet Light, that makes a whole lot of sense, because we've got a great team that would eventually step up and want to move into a new role. And of course, exiting, people make more money when they exit than they generally do running the business. And that's all years in the history of the business, but all businesses are slightly different. Thinking about those 4 steps, look, the challenge, let's just talk about the challenge of entrepreneurs, because we're both entrepreneurs. So if I speak ill of us, I'm speaking, truthfully. We're scattered. We just try to keep the wheels on the bus. We're just trying to get the business going. We're not thinking about systematizing. We're not thinking about exiting. We're just trying to keep business alive. At what point do people, or would you recommend, if they truly want to have this shortened career, to be able to then do whatever the hell they want? And maybe it's to continue to run that business that they've built and love. At what point should they really focus on these 4 steps?
I think from the get-go, from day one, I feel like the reason why execute is probably the most important and also the most fun, let's face it, because you're saying yes, you're doing the stuff, you're setting up, you're testing stuff out, you're seeing what works, and you're probably involved in every step of your business, if not a massive bottleneck, and you're in charge of nearly everything. It just does not run without you. I think that's the time where it's so easy to get distracted, start a side project, and do anything other than just work on getting your business off the ground. And so getting your business off the ground for me involves 3 things. It's your flagship product or service, just one, not like a bazillion different offerings with all their own landing pages, just one. Your target audience, so you know your exact customer avatar. And again, just one. It's like marketing managers, not marketing managers, and entrepreneurs, and these people, just one. And then third is the channel through which you reach them. And again, just one. So I totally did this by accident, but in the early stages of my business, we were selling social media management to marketing managers through networking, and that was it. And I feel like the goal of the execute phase is just to get that right. And then once you have that right and you know that it's growing, that's when you can move to systemize stuff, knowing that as you are systemizing, your business will still be growing. And then systemize is a whole other section, which involves a whole other load of challenges.
Systemize so that you can grow and take on more of the same clients, or expand your type of client base?
Well, kind of both. So if you've completed the execute phase well, then you know you've got something that is in demand, stands up to questioning, that you're proud of, that works. And so that's required when you go through to systemize, because systemize is not really going to make you money. It's probably going to cost you money, and you need to see it as an investment. So the idea is that as you write down every process that happens within your business to be able to automate, delegate, eliminate, your business is still continuing to grow while you're spending this bunch of extra time doing it.
Are those all part of the systemized part, right? Automate, delegate, eliminate.
Yeah.
In other words, grow up, right?
In other words, grow up.
Right.
So for me, when I got to this stage, and maybe people listening can relate, but I was well in the trenches of the execute phase. Everything that happened in my business went by me. I was the main point of contact for every single client. I was doing all the marketing myself. I was doing all the prospecting myself. I was going to all the events. I was speaking at the events. I was even, you know what? This is so embarrassing. I was creating invoices on Microsoft Word every month and emailing them manually to clients, because I didn't even realize that Xero was a thing. I didn't use anything like that. So there were so many processes that were meaning that I was not only doing them all, but I was crazy busy doing them all. And I could not see an end to it. I felt like I couldn't go on holiday. And so I kind of affectionately refer to this as the Jodie show. But the thing that marked going from execute to systemize was working out that this Jodie show was completely unsustainable. I wanted to take a holiday and I had to do something about it. So for me, this was a table, a fancy Microsoft Excel table with 4 columns. And the first was every single process that happened in my business. The second was who did the process now, which was just me. And anyone listening that's in execute, they probably do all the process in their business as well. The third was who should do it in the future. This was either someone who was already in my team, it was the name of a role I was going to hire, it was a software that I was going to use to automate it, or it was just don't do it because it just didn't need to be done in the first place. And then the fourth column was the plan of when I was going to make this happen. So that was the kind of plan that bridged the gap between execute and systemize.
How long did it take you to come up with that? As busy as you are in the execute phase, you don't have time for a holiday. You don't have time for much of anything except doing those invoices in Microsoft Word and emailing them manually every year or every month. Sitting down and doing what you did with Systematize makes a whole lot of sense, because ultimately it's going to free up your time and allow you to expand the business and have a life at the same time, and eventually get to that last phase, which is exit, which is where the money is. But it's quite the process. So thank you for doing it. I guess let's talk about how long it would take for somebody reading the book or going through your process. And I know you've got a lot of it on your website as well. What kind of time frame would you put on sort of systematizing?
So I think I did this in a way that I wouldn't necessarily recommend, which was to massively throw myself in at the deep end. So when I decided I wanted a holiday, I booked the holiday. I booked a 5-week trip to Australia, 3 months in the future. And I gave myself a deadline to get this sorted out. So my systemizing was born out of necessity, of thinking, I'm going to be the other side of the world. I have to make this happen. And part of coming up with the plan was talking to a team member about the trip I'd booked, and them saying, I'm really worried about your trip. And me saying, why? And they told me all the reasons they were worried. And I wrote them all down and decided to make a plan for each of those things happening. And that was what led to the table with all the different processes.
That sounds like something that's smart, not so smart, right? You say you wouldn't recommend it to everyone, but we're entrepreneurs. We probably, the majority of us didn't graduate top of our class. We couldn't sit still. We had to focus. We had to do our own thing. We might have had an issue with authority, and we just knew we could do something better and on our own, or serve people in our own way. And oftentimes we wait until the last minute, and we do that work incredibly well at the last minute, or just grind it out. And I hate that word, grind it out, because it's just not the way we should be living our life. So good for you for doing it. For most people, it's probably going to take longer. And I suppose if they plan it personally with Quiet Light, we're still in systematize, Jodie. How old are we now, folks? 20, 25 years, 24 years? No, not that. That's not right. I can't do math. 2007. So 15 years. And we grew by 85% in 2021. And all of a sudden we're like, and we've grown 55% year over year for the last 6 years. But it grew to the point where like, oh, we need people, we need bodies, we need help. And we exploded the size of our team in the last 18 months to do that. So sometimes you've got to do it just when the business needs it, I would imagine. We could still go on holiday, so we had that benefit and could do different things. But for us, it's been 18 months, and now we're faced with a potential recession. So it may be even a little longer in terms of, as you said, sometimes this may cost you money, right? Systematizing as opposed to, it's saving you money. This is without a doubt costing us money, but in the long run, and that's how we're looking at the businesses. And this is what most people don't do. They don't get out of the execute phase. They get completely burned out and they sell their business. And they sell it for a hell of a lot less than it would be worth if they jumped into systematized, hung on for a couple of years, and then came out of it for a couple of years, and their business is worth so much more. The problem is that they get shiny object syndrome while they're in execute phase, and they take on all these other little projects because they don't want to do the work to get to the systemized phase. My opinion, I've seen it happen 1,000 times. I talked to a lot of people. So I'm excited about the book, and I hope everybody in the audience picks it up and reads it because there's a lot to it. But let's go to the next phase beyond systematize. What is that, Jodie? Scrutinize. I think we might be in that place now. So in fact, I'm pretty sure we are, because we're going, what the hell are we doing? Go ahead. I want to hear about this part.
So in an ideal world, you've completed execute, you know your 3 things, you've graduated execute, you've moved to systemize, and now you have begun the process of making sure that you are not the bottleneck to your business. And ideally, if you've done this in a really good way, you are now surplus to requirements. You're not really needed. You want to be involved, and you're doing your thing within the business, but you're not totally needed. I think this can be really difficult for entrepreneurs because our egos get in the way. And when we're not needed to answer questions and put out fires, we start to think, why does no one need me? Am I not important? Do I not matter? And that can be really tough to deal with. But if you can deal with that, and if you can get through systemize, you should now have this very well-oiled machine that is still growing, because you've moved yourself out of processes that you probably weren't giving your full attention to. Other people have taken them over. If you've hired and trained the right people, they're probably doing better than you did, which means they're seeing things that you didn't. And you're in scrutinize, which is where you are faced with this decision of, what do I do now? And there are a whole host of different things that you could do now. So just as a aside, we have a quiz at quiz.10yearcareer.com, and that's how you tell which stage of your 10-year career you're in. And of all the thousands of entrepreneurs that have taken this quiz, 62% are in execute, 33% are in systemize, 4% are in scrutinize, and only 1% are in exit. So it really is hardly anyone who makes it through to scrutinize. If you've done that, if you've systemized your business, you're in the top 5% of businesses, according to my data from my survey.
Before you gave that data, I was definitely now that you've said it, we're in scrutinize, because sometimes I'm wondering what I'm doing. I don't have that much to do anymore, which is wonderful. But I don't want to brag and say I'm in the 5%, but I think we are. I'm going to have to take the quiz and see what it is. Quiz.10yearcareer.com. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's right. So now you have decisions. So there are a whole host of them. I'll just run through them in no particular order. You could proceed to exit, where you sell, or where you continue to own the business, but you step back and you truly aren't involved, not just pretending. You can't just say that you've exited and then actually be doing loads of work. It has to be like no, I'm really, really not involved. No email address, no Slack access, etc. You could decide that you want to just sit back a bit. You want to travel. You want to do other things. That's exactly what I did when I had completed the systemization of my business. I spent 1 month in every three just traveling and training and exploring different parts of the world, and did that for about 5 years until COVID hit. So that's absolutely an option. You kind of run your business like a lifestyle business at that point. Or you could start a new project, which could be a completely separate project, because now is the time for side projects, because you've got something that is your main source of income that is working and is running. Or you could head back into execute in the same business. So the guy who bought my agency was really interesting, because he had hit the scrutinize phase, decided that running agencies was just his jam. So he bought a bunch of different agencies and headed back into execute, but with like 6 different agencies to kind of move together rather than just the one. So you've got loads of things that you could do, but it all relies on this huge sense of self-awareness and just asking yourself, what do I actually want to do, and how do I actually want to spend my time?
Yeah, it's your agency buyer had been there, he'd done it. So in that execute phase, it probably wasn't as painful as it was the very first time he did it, or you did it, or that I did it. There's the learning curve is a heck of a lot shorter for sure.
Yeah.
We talk about what to do after an exit many times on the show and in personal conversations. And I've seen people go and sell their business and jump right into another one. Or they've sold a SaaS business and they buy a e-commerce business, or vice versa. And some people say, if you've got the financial wherewithal, don't do anything new for 12 months and figure out your next path. What's your recommendation, given that you've had this option yourself?
Oh my goodness, it's a minefield, and you have no idea what it's going to feel like until you do it, or I didn't anyway. I'd thought a lot about my sale before it happened. The sale took about 6 months from the moment I decided to sell to the moment we completed. And at the start of that, I'd really visualized what I thought I would feel like when the sale completed.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, it was nothing like that, because it was deep in the trenches of COVID. We were in lockdown, we couldn't travel. It was like my gym was in my living room because the gym was shut. And so it was just such a strange existence. And it probably made it more strange. But I definitely agree with taking time out after, because you just need to sit in the void and see what it feels like. But then I think that a really good thing to do is loads of journaling, so that you work out how you feel, what you miss, what you don't miss, what's missing, and therefore what your next step could be. I did a bunch of experiments. So 1 month was like, I said yes to podcast interviews and I did loads of those. Another month was I had 2 powerlifting competitions, so I did those and focused on that. Another was focused on writing. Another was just did nothing and traveled, and did it all with a view to just getting to know myself and then working out what my next step should be. And where I got to was, the business that I had sold was not the business that I would start from scratch if I was starting another business. And I think that's because I was 22 when I started it. I was 32 when I sold it. You're a whole different person then.
Yeah.
So I realized that I did want to start a new business, but it wasn't that one. That one had run its course. So I think having that period where you just sit in the stillness, you journal, you work out who you are, can lead you to your next step in a really good way.
How is it for you at, the age of whatever you are now? I won't say it, but you just said 32-ish. How is it for you at this age, with the freedom and flexibility that you have, when most of the people your age have to actually get up and go to work every day? Do you find personally that it's difficult to say, yeah, I'm just going to hang out in Lisbon for a while, then I'm going to go down to New Zealand for a couple of months? Or have you just been that way, and people are within your circle are like that as well?
People within my circle are like that as well.
They're all like that as well. All right.
And that's because I've sought them out. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the networks I'm in is called Dynamite Circle, and it's a group for location independent entrepreneurs. So I hang out with a lot of location independent entrepreneurs who are focused on, where can I live? Where can I train? How can I be in the sunshine all the time? And they're not just focused on, I have to have a business or I have to do work. And then what underpins that is that I feel like even when I was running my agency, it didn't really feel like work, because I enjoyed it so much. Because I think doing work that you would do for free or doing work that doesn't feel like work is how you win at life. So I've been trying to create that situation for myself for a very long time. So I don't really feel any different post exit to pre exit in that sense.
Yeah, doing work that doesn't feel like work is the way to win at life. And we all know that and we hear it, but unfortunately, people get on paths because they think that they should because they got pushed into it, or whether it's parents or peer pressure or whatever it might be. I totally agree, but I know how hard it is to actually go down that path. Let's talk about the fourth section, exit. What does the book talk about there? What are you advising in that part of your process?
So the book mentions your framework
Woo-hoo.
within exit.
Good.
And I read your book after I'd sold, and I really wanted to read it. And I was more relieved when I did that I didn't do anything wrong.
Good.
So that
Good.
was
People
good.
usually swear at me after they've read my book and they've already exited. Kind of the same thing. Why didn't you write this before? Yeah.
So it goes into your 5 pillars: growth, risk, transferability, documentation, and then the magic's like the fifth one that isn't, the whole being someone that someone wants to do business with. And then it talks a lot about having an intentional sale, which I think is super important, because I know that I've chatted to business owners before who they vaguely think they want to sell their business, but they haven't really been intentional about it. And there's one friend in particular who I think has been selling his business off and on for like 3 years, and he has one buyer at a time, and then it always falls through. And I just think when you want to go, you want to go, and then it's really important to line up everything at the same time. But for me, something I did that was super geeky was I wrote myself a pretend check for the amount I wanted to sell for one social media agency with no earnout. I signed it like the perfect buyer or something cheesy. And then on the date, I wrote the date that I wanted to sell. And then what ended up happening is we sold for that exact amount, didn't have to do an earnout. And the date I wrote on the check was within 2 weeks of meeting the buyer. So I feel like there's something about being really intentional about it and then lining up everything makes it happen so much more so than just vaguely flitting around, telling people, which is the worst thing ever, and then not taking the action that you need to.
That's just incredible that you wrote yourself a check. It's not super geeky. It's super smart, Jodie. I mean, you put it into action. You just put it out there. You set a goal with a date and a time frame. A date and a dollar amount. And of course, you had some feelings with that as well. I talk about that in my book, Dollars, Date, and Feeling. Mm-hmm. That's really, really smart. I would encourage everyone right now to do that. Write yourself a check. Sign it, the perfect buyer, put the date on it. That's brilliant. Why didn't I put that in my book? My God, that's great.
Sequel, you put it in the next one. What I wanted to do was make the sale feel inevitable. Because I think that one of the hardest things to do is barrel forward with everything that you need to do in order to sell your company without knowing for sure that you're going to sell it. And no one really does know for sure that they're going to sell it because it could fall through at any point. You could never find the buyer. So it was writing the pretend check. It was also Googling social media agency acquisition or social media agency sold and just seeing how many different agencies were sold all the time, bought and sold all the time, which made me think this is normal. This is doable. This can happen. And then it was working with a broker who told me the process of selling a company and what that would be month by month. That also made me think, okay, this is routine. This is inevitable. It's going to happen. And then because I believed so strongly that it was going to happen, it meant that I could work backwards from there rather than having to kind of blindly navigate my to-do list without really knowing.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much information out there. Of course, I want to go to the broker versus no broker aspect right now, because you just said blindly navigating things, not knowing what you were doing. Did you always intend to use a broker to help you exit, or were there always people and little people on your shoulder saying, you can do this on your own. You don't need a broker. Do this on your own. What was your mindset there?
Before the 6 months before I completed my sale, I didn't even know I was going to sell. I didn't really know it was possible. I didn't really know that companies got bought and sold all the time. I just thought I need to speak to someone who would know about this stuff. So there's a friend of a friend who's an agency owner with an agency about maybe 9 times the size of mine. And I got on a call with her And I said to her, you're probably about the size of company that would buy us from what I'd found out in my research. What would you want to know? What would you want to see? And she was amazing because she told me all the questions that she would ask someone that she wanted to buy. She sent me the list of them. And then I like prepared answers to those as if I was selling to her, even though that wasn't the point of it. And then she said, we work with a M&A consultant who you could speak to if you want to help you a bit more. So I was like, yep, great. Got on the phone with him. And that's when he said, you need all this stuff in place. You need a completely systemized business and you need a second tier management team in place who will look after everything. And I was like, whoa, I've already got all this. This is exactly what I've got in place already. And so he said, well, you don't really need to work with me then. You're way ahead of this. You don't need to do the kind of 6 months work that would be involved in this. I can put you straight on to someone who we work with who's a broker. And so when I met the broker, we were ready. I'd written the deck that kind of put my business as a product ready to show a buyer. And yeah, he pretty much signed us up straight away. And it seemed to make sense. The process of what we do in month 1 through to month 6 made sense. And then we started getting introduced to buyers and then had chemistry meetings and then they turned into offers. So it demystified the whole process. I don't know how I would have done it without a broker. I think it would have worked, but I think there are some things that you don't want to just say yourself. It's really good having the broker on the call to say them instead of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And the key is the demystifying the process because you don't know what you don't know. And at one point or another, things generally go sideways. It could be more stressful than you need it to be. You don't need sleep, lose sleep. And, you can hold firm on or the broker in your case can hold firm on the all cash offer that you got or whatever structure it is and not waver on a call because you're doing a Zoom call with them and they ask you a difficult question about modifying the deal. So you've always got somebody in the middle there.
The Zoom calls are really interesting. And I'd been prepared by the broker before we did those as well. And he called them chemistry meetings.
I love those. Yeah. And we're going to change that. We're not doing buy seller conference calls anymore, folks. We're doing chemistry calls.
It's beautiful.
Because that's what they are. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we had 12 in the end. And there were some where we had loads of chemistry. There were some where we just didn't have any. And that's fine. It's just, it's okay. It's just not going to work out. But we all wish each other well. And what I thought was really good about the chemistry calls was that they went first. So the potential buyers talked about their business, their clients, what they were looking for. And then I was there scribbling notes down. And then when I talked about my business, I was talking about the stuff that was relevant to them because I could have talked about a bunch of stuff that didn't matter at all, but it meant I could steer the conversation in that way. And then, we had a lot of good calls with them, but I was really happy that I was prepared for them. Did you get more than one offer? Yeah, we got 3.
And did you choose the highest offer or the buyer that you liked the most?
Both. We were lucky it was the same one.
Lucky the same one. Yeah. Okay. Good. Did we cover, I know under execute, systemize, scrutinize, we covered, a number of different steps. Did we cover those already through this conversation on exit?
Yeah, I think so. It's a lot to do with your pillars. It's seeing your business as a product. It's finding some way of taking that step back and being able to see it with perspective. That if you're really intertwined and you think your business is all about you and you think it reflects you, it's going to be really, really hard to do that. And part of it as well is not telling people, because I think that's so important. It's like your team doesn't need to know, your clients don't need to know, your grandma doesn't need to know, no one needs to know. It's like, just do it and don't talk to people about it, because it means that you can avoid hearing things like, oh, your name's in the company name, you're never going to be able to sell, or oh, X% of your revenues from this one client, you're never going to be able to sell. Like, someone will always tell you, but they don't really know. And so if that puts you off, then you won't do it. So it's just better to say nothing and only work with the professionals who can actually help you. But then after that, exit is all about moving forward with intention, having a plan, making it happen. And it's the shortest of the 4 different phases. It's definitely the shortest, because you'll know you can't be vaguely selling your business for years and years.
I think the key thing about the 4 pillars and that person behind the business being the 5th is that if you don't get those things right, your value changes dramatically. If there's one weak pillar Instead of getting an all cash deal, you're getting an earnout because you're the name and face of the business and all the clients rely on you and you have to stick around for 18 to 24 months. That's not the kind of exit that people generally want. But you said something about that. Name, face, your name's on the business. Don't tell people because they'll tell you can't sell. Was your name on the business?
Yeah, it had my initials in it.
Had your initials in it, but you had removed yourself. So did the clients that you had in the agency know your name, know your face, ever talk to you on a regular basis at the point when you were selling, or did they have client managers?
At the point at which we sold, I wasn't the main point of contact for any client, and I hadn't been for 6 years, probably longer than that.
6 years. That's incredible. And was it 10 years that you had the business?
Yeah, it was 10 years I had the business. But once I started to systemize, it was like, this doesn't make sense because I'm the main point of contact for all the clients, but I'm not doing the work. So that was a big shift where I stepped aside from being the person who called them, followed them up, sent their reports, because I didn't want to, because the account managers were doing such good work. I didn't want to downplay that. I didn't want to just be the person who was the face and kind of took all the credit. So that was about hiring better account managers, teaching them in client communications, because it's very specific how you speak to clients. And then from then on, they looked after that, and they had team leaders, and we had a general manager, and that was all looked after by then. The hardest part of that was when I was in between systemizing a few different things. So when I wasn't doing the client communication, but I was still doing the sales, that's when I would do the selling. People would sign up with me, and then I wasn't looking after them. So there was a lot of friction there, because it was like, hang on, you sold us and now you're not looking after us. Mm-hmm. But as soon as I systemized the sales process as well, got some amazing salespeople on board, clients didn't ever need to speak to me because they'd be looked after in the sales process. Then they'd be handed over to their account manager. And I was just this kind of face of the business who was off doing other things. I think having a personal brand can really benefit you from needing to be involved, or clients thinking that you're going to be in meetings. I think it can work the other way. It can actually work in your favor.
It's all very impressive what you've done. And now you've written your 20th book. I don't know. And you're a powerlifting champion as well, right? Would champion be the right word?
I mean, I've run a few competitions. I wouldn't call myself a champion. I'm definitely a powerlifter. I'm a powerlifter, and I compete for Great Britain and England about once a year as well. I don't know how you do it all. Very impressive. The book itself will hit sort of shelves in the US. When can people buy them here in the States? For those that are listening in the States. For those that are listening in the States, you can buy it from the 15th of November, 2022. From those that are listening anywhere else in the world, you can buy it right now. It's at 10yearcareer.com, and it should be anywhere that sells books.
10yearcareer.com. And if I'm in the States, can I buy it at 10yearcareer.com right now? We're recording in September, folks. Can you buy it in advance in the States and have it shipped from overseas, or is that just ridiculously expensive?
You probably could do. If you really, really, really wanted to get it ahead, you could definitely do that. But otherwise, it's pre-orders and you'll get it in November. But there's Kindle, there's paperback, and there's also an audio version as well. So you can listen to my Birmingham accent for hours and hours.
Excellent. All right. Well, good. Okay. Lots of different choices. Jodie, 10yearcareer.com, is that how people would find you? Mm-hmm. Congratulations on your 20th book. I'm excited to have the audience read this. I think that it will get them beyond that execute phase, which I think so many of them are in, and you've done the thinking for them. So I appreciate it. I'm going to look at it myself. I'm going to go to make sure I get this right, quiz.10yearcareer.com.
Yep.
And see which phase I'm in. I'll shoot you a note, tell you how wrong I was, that maybe I'm still in the execute phase.
Find it out. It'll be really interesting. And 63% of people are in execute. And progress. Yeah.
Yeah. And they shouldn't be there in the third year of running their business necessarily, right? They should move to it as soon as they can, to the systemize phase, I suppose. I guess every business is different though.
I feel like I want people to have a 10-year career where they progress every year, rather than just have the same year 10 times. And it's like, we have these progression plans for our team members. When someone starts with us, they'll be like, okay, what am I going to do in 1 year and 2 years and 3 years? And we have answers and they have appraisals and we know what's around the corner for them. But what about us? So I want this to be our progression plan of how we progress through our own businesses and then don't need to work again within a decade.
It's brilliant. Wish you wrote it sooner. Thanks for coming on, Jodie. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jay.